I stood in the doorway of the Venetian Room, the restaurant I'd saved 3 months of my pension to book, watching my daughter's face turn from surprise to something I'd never seen before, disgust. "Mom? Why are you here?" Emily's voice cut through the champagne chatter and soft jazz. "You'll embarrass me in front of my colleagues." The balloon bouquet I'd been holding, gold and silver, because those were her favorite colors when she was 12, slipped from my fingers. Someone behind me caught it. I couldn't move. The room had gone quiet, 40 pairs of eyes now trained on the old woman in the navy dress from Macy's clearance rack, standing among the Armani suits and Louboutin heels. I'd thought this would be different. I'd thought celebrating her promotion to vice president of marketing would mean something. I was wrong. The first time I held Emily, she was 6 pounds and 3 ounces of wrinkled pink fury, screaming her displeasure at entering a world that was too bright and too cold. I remember thinking she had my determination, the way she gripped my finger with that impossibly tiny fist, like she was already claiming her space. Her father, Robert, had died when she was 4, heart attack at 43, leaving me with a mortgage, a preschooler, and $312 in the checking account. I worked 2 jobs for 14 years, daytime at the public library, checking books in and out, helping elderly patrons navigate the computer system, nights and weekends at Morrison's Diner, serving coffee and taking orders from truckers who tipped in quarters. Emily didn't know about the second job for the first 3 years. I'd tell her I was going to book club or visiting friends. I'd change into my waitress uniform in the diner bathroom, scrub the smell of bacon and syrup from my skin before coming home at midnight. She was a bright child. Gifted, they called it. Got into the magnet program for middle school, then won a partial scholarship to Phillips Academy for high school. Partial, that word meant I refinanced the house twice, cashed out my small 401k, and picked up catering shifts on holidays when the diner paid double time. But watching her walk across that stage in her cap and gown, valedictorian medal gleaming against her chest, I knew every missed hour of sleep had been worth it. She went to Columbia, full ride. I cried when the acceptance letter came, not just because she'd done it, but because maybe, finally, I could breathe. I was 52 years old and felt 70. My feet ached constantly from the standing. My back had developed a permanent curve from hunching over dirty tables. But Emily was going to have opportunities I'd never dreamed of. "Mom, you don't have to work at the diner anymore," she'd told me during her sophomore year, home for Thanksgiving. "It's embarrassing when my friends ask what you do and I have to tell them you're a waitress." I'd laughed it off. "Waitress is nothing to be ashamed of, honey. It's honest work." She'd gotten quiet then, picking at her green beans. "I know. I wish you'd worked harder when you were younger, done something more with your life." That comment had lodged itself somewhere in my chest like a splinter I couldn't quite reach. But I'd pushed it down. She was young. She'd understand someday. After Columbia, she landed at Peterson and Associates, a marketing firm in Manhattan. Started at $58,000 a year, which seemed like monopoly money to someone who'd never broken $30,000. Within 3 years, she was making 6 figures. She met Brandon at a company retreat in the Hamptons, Harvard MBA, family money, the kind of smile that looked expensive. They got engaged after 11 months. I met him twice before the wedding. First time, he shook my hand with the grip of someone who'd been taught it mattered, looked just past my shoulder when he talked, and called me ma'am like I was his waiter. Second time, at their engagement party at his parents' estate in Connecticut. I'd arrived in my best dress, the same navy one I'm wearing now, actually, and his mother, Catherine, had asked if I was the caterer. "No," I'd said, smiling through the mortification. "I'm Emily's mother." Catherine's expression had flickered surprise, then something like pity, then a careful neutrality that felt worse than either. "Oh, how lovely. Emily's told us so much about you." She hadn't told them anything. I could tell by the way Catherine's friends kept asking me which country club I belonged to, what charity boards I sat on. I'd excused myself to the bathroom and sat in the marble-tiled powder room for 20 minutes, staring at myself in the gilded mirror, trying to remember when my daughter had stopped looking at me with pride. The wedding cost $90,000. Brandon's parents paid for most of it. I contributed $7,000, everything I'd managed to save after selling Robert's coin collection and my mother's wedding ring. Emily had asked for 10, but I simply didn't have it. She'd sighed when I told her. That particular sigh that teenage girl's perfect. The one that says, "You've disappointed them again." "It's fine, Mom." Brandon's parents said they'd cover it. "But you could have at least tried harder to save more. This is my wedding." I'd been working 50-hour weeks at the library, even taken on weekend shifts. I was 63 years old. How much harder was I supposed to try? After the wedding, the calls became less frequent. Once a week became once a month, became every few months. She was busy. I understood that. Building a career, maintaining a marriage, decorating the Park Slope brownstone. Brandon's parents had bought them as a wedding present. When she did call, conversations were short and centered on her complaints. Her assistant was incompetent. Brandon's mother was overbearing. The traffic in the city was impossible. "How are you, Mom?" she'd ask at the end. But the tone suggested she was already thinking about her next call, her next meeting, her next anything but this. "I'm fine, sweetheart. The garden is doing well." Mrs. Patterson's cat had kittens. "That's nice. Listen, I have to run. Brandon and I are meeting the Hendersons for dinner." Then she made vice president, youngest in the firm's history. She called me on a Tuesday afternoon, I remember, because Tuesdays were my day off, and I'd been replanting the impatiens. "Mom, I got it. VP of Marketing. Can you believe it?" Her voice had that sparkle I remembered from when she was little, when she'd won the spelling bee or aced her math test. Pure, uncomplicated joy. It had been so long since I'd heard it. "Oh, honey, that's wonderful. I'm so proud of you." "Thanks, Mom. Brandon's planning a celebration dinner. Just something small with colleagues. Anyway, I've got to call Daddy's sister. Talk soon." Just colleagues, not family. I'd understood, or thought I had. This was her professional life, her new world. I didn't fit into that landscape of corner offices and expense accounts. But then I'd gotten an idea, a surprise party, like the ones I used to throw when she was little streamers in the living room, homemade cake with too much frosting, inviting all her friends from school. She'd loved those. Maybe if I did this, showed her I could celebrate her success properly, she'd remember that I was proud, remember that I'd always been her biggest supporter. I found out from her assistant sweet girl named Monica, who'd helped me once when I'd called Emily's office, that there wasn't actually a dinner planned. Brandon had mentioned wanting to do something, but hadn't arranged anything. Monica suggested the Venetian room. She even gave me the names of Emily's closest colleagues, helped me track down email addresses. I sent the invitations from a Gmail account I created. "Join us for a surprise celebration honoring Emily Richardson's promotion to VP." RSVP'd responses came in quickly. Everyone loved Emily, it seemed. Everyone was excited to celebrate her. The venue cost $1,200 for the private room, plus another $800 for the appetizer package and open bar for 2 hours. I took out a small loan from my credit union, $2,000 at 18% interest. At my age, with my income, it was the best I could qualify for. But what else was I going to spend money on? I lived alone in a paid-off house, drove a 15-year-old Camry, and my biggest luxury was the premium bird seed for the finches. I bought a new outfit. Not the navy dress that was already in my closet, but I got my hair done at the salon instead of cutting it myself. Paid for a professional blowout. Even let them talk me into some subtle highlights. $140. The woman in the mirror looked younger, brighter. Like maybe she did belong at a Manhattan celebration for a vice president. Monica helped me coordinate getting Emily there. She'd tell Emily that Brandon had finally arranged the dinner, had it all planned at the Venetian room at 7 p.m. All Emily had to do was show up. I'd be waiting with everyone else. the room decorated with those gold and silver balloons, the banner I'd had printed that said, "Congratulations, Emily," in elegant script. I took the train in from New Jersey, transferred twice, walked 6 blocks in heels that pinched. I was there by 5:30, helping arrange the flowers I'd bought, making sure the champagne was properly chilled. The guests started arriving at 6:30. I introduced myself to everyone. "Hi, I'm Margaret, Emily's mother." Some seemed surprised. "Oh, Emily's mother. She's never mentioned, how wonderful to meet you." Others were warm, asked me questions about Emily growing up, complimented me on arranging such a lovely event. I felt, for an hour, like I'd done something right, like I was part of her life in a meaningful way. Then Emily walked in at 7:15, Brandon slightly behind her, and everyone yelled, "Surprise!" Her face went through a transformation. First shock, genuine surprise, then delight, as she recognized colleagues, friends. She was laughing, hugging people, exclaiming how amazing this was. "Who organized it?" "Your mother did," Monica said, beaming, gesturing to where I stood near the balloon bouquet. And that's when everything changed. Emily's smile didn't exactly disappear, but it froze, crystallized into something brittle. Her eyes met mine across the room, and in that gaze, I saw what I'd been afraid to acknowledge for years: disappointment, embarrassment, resentment. She crossed the room slowly, aware that people were watching. When she reached me, her voice was low, but not low enough that the people nearby couldn't hear. "Mom, why are you here? You'll embarrass me in front of my colleagues." The balloon bouquet was suddenly very heavy. I planned this. For you. To celebrate. "You planned this?" Her voice rose slightly. "You mean you contacted my colleagues? You arranged this party without asking me?" Brandon appeared at her elbow, his hand possessive on her shoulder. "Emily, sweetie, let's not make a scene." "I'm not making a scene. I'm just confused why my mother would think it's appropriate to insert herself into my professional life." Insert herself, like I was an unwanted growth, something that needed to be removed. "I wanted to celebrate you," I said quietly. My throat felt tight. "I'm proud of you, Mom." She took the balloons from my hands, passed them to Brandon. This is not the time or place. We can talk about this later. Maybe you should go home." "But I planned, the food is ordered. Everyone's here. Brandon and I will handle it from here." She glanced around, smile back in place for the watching crowd. "Thank you for the thought. Really. But we've got it now." She turned away then, back to her colleagues, back to the world where I didn't belong. Brandon gave me a tight smile that was more grimace than anything else. "She's just overwhelmed," he said, though his tone suggested he didn't believe it any more than I did. "You understand." I stood there for another few minutes, invisible in the room I'd paid for, surrounded by people I'd invited. Then I gathered my purse and coat and walked out. No one said goodbye except Monica, who caught me at the door. "Mrs. Richardson, I'm so sorry." I thought she'd be happy. So did I, sweetheart. The train ride home felt endless. I kept replaying it. "Why are you here? You'll embarrass me." The way she'd said colleagues like it was a sacred word, a separate realm I'd contaminated by entering. When had I become something to be embarrassed about? I thought about all those years, the double shifts, the catering jobs where I'd served petites fours to wealthy families while Emily slept at a neighbor's house, the time I'd worn my winter coat for 3 years because new boots for her growing feet had been more important, the parent-teacher conferences where I'd shown up tired but present, every single one, even when my feet were bleeding in my shoes. I'd done everything right, hadn't I? But maybe that was the problem. I'd done everything for her, and now she couldn't see past what I wasn't. I wasn't wealthy. I wasn't connected. I wasn't someone who belonged at the Venetian room with the vice presidents and their Harvard MBAs. I was just her mother. And apparently, that wasn't enough. She didn't call the next day, or the day after that. I thought maybe she'd reach out, apologize, explain that she'd been caught off guard and handled it poorly, but my phone stayed silent. I checked it obsessively, the way I used to when she first went away to college, and I'd worried constantly about her safety. Finally, a week later, I called her. "Mom, hi." Her voice was distracted. "What's up?" "I wanted to talk about last week." "About the party." "Oh, that." "Yeah, listen, Mom, I've been meaning to talk to you about boundaries." Boundaries. That word that people use when they want to push you away but make it sound reasonable. Boundaries? You can't just plan things in my professional life without asking me. It's inappropriate. I have a reputation to maintain, and having my mother show up unannounced sends a certain message. What message? She sighed. That same teenage sigh, that I'm not independent, that I'm someone who needs their mother to organize their life. These are people I work with, people I need to take me seriously, and they won't take you seriously if they know you have a mother who loves you? Don't twist this. You know what I mean. But I didn't. Or maybe I did and just didn't want to admit it. I spent $2,000 on that party, Emily. Money I don't have. I took out a loan. Silence on the other end. Then, "I didn't ask you to do that. You're my daughter. I wanted to celebrate you." "Well, next time, don't, okay? Just don't." She ended the call shortly after, some excuse about a meeting. I sat in my kitchen, the same kitchen where I'd packed her school lunches for 12 years, and I cried for the first time since Robert's funeral. But crying doesn't pay bills. The credit union wanted their money $183 a month for 12 months. I'd have to take on extra shifts at the library, maybe see if Morrison still needed weekend help, even though I'd left there 5 years ago. I did the math that night. Over Emily's lifetime, from birth through her wedding, I'd spent approximately $264,000 on her. That was factoring the lost wages from part-time work when she was small, the second mortgage, the cashed-out retirement, the contributions to tuition that the scholarship didn't cover, the wedding, all of it. $264,000 to raise a daughter who was embarrassed by me. What had I gotten in return? A daughter who called 4 times a year, who never visited, who'd made it clear that my presence in her life was something to be managed rather than celebrated. 3 months passed. The loan payments were manageable, barely, but they meant I couldn't afford the small luxuries I'd grown accustomed to: streaming services, the occasional dinner at the diner, new books instead of library copies. I turned 67 that October. Emily sent a card, one of those generic ones from Hallmark with a pre-printed message and just her name signed at the bottom. No call. That's when I started thinking about my will. I'd made it years ago, shortly after Robert died. Everything to Emily: the house, the car, the small savings account, my library pension. It wasn't much, maybe $180,000 total if you included the house value, but it was mine. My life's work, condensed into assets and accounts, and I'd been planning to leave it all to someone who couldn't even call on my birthday. I sat with that thought for a few weeks, turned it over like a stone in my hand, examining every angle. Was I being petty? Vindictive? Or was I finally understanding what I deserved? I thought about the loan, $2,000 that she'd said she didn't ask for, but she also hadn't offered to repay, had she? Hadn't even acknowledged the sacrifice. And it wasn't just the party money. It was everything. Every dollar I'd squeezed from nothing, every hour I'd sacrificed, every dream I'd deferred so she could have hers. When had love become so one-sided? I found an estate attorney through a recommendation from Carol at the library. His office was modest, nothing like the sleek firm Emily worked for, but his eyes were kind when I explained what I wanted. "I need to change my will," I told him. Everything was going to my daughter, but I'd like to make some adjustments. He asked the standard questions. Was there a specific reason? Did I have other heirs? Was I of sound mind? I assured him I was thinking clearly, more clearly than I had in years, actually. "I want to leave my house and half my assets to a scholarship fund," I said, "for single mothers trying to put themselves through school. The other half can go to Emily, but only if she meets certain conditions." He raised his eyebrows. Conditions? She has to visit me in person at least once a quarter for the 2 years before my death. If she doesn't, that half goes to the scholarship fund too. He wrote it down. Asked if I was sure. I was sure. For the first time in years, I was absolutely certain of something. One more thing, I added. I took out a $2,000 loan to pay for a party I threw for her. She told me she didn't ask for it. I'd like that amount deducted from whatever she inherits, with interest, to be paid to the credit union directly from the estate. A small smile played at his lips. That's perfectly within your rights. Signing those papers felt like shedding a weight I'd been carrying for decades. The weight of being not enough, of apologizing for my existence, of shrinking myself to fit into the corners of my daughter's life. I was done shrinking. I didn't tell Emily immediately. What was the point? She'd find out eventually, probably not until after I was gone. But I did send her a letter, not email, a real letter, handwritten on my good stationery. Dear Emily, I wrote. I've been thinking a lot about our relationship lately, about the party and your reaction. I understand you felt I overstepped, and maybe I did, but I need you to understand something too. I am not embarrassed to be your mother. I worked hard, maybe not in ways that impress your colleagues, but I worked hard. I loved you hard, and if that's something you're ashamed of, then perhaps the problem isn't where I don't belong, but where I do. I've made some changes to my will, not out of spite, but out of self-respect. I hope someday you'll understand that love shouldn't require you to disappear. With love always, Mom. I mailed it on a Thursday. She called Friday evening. Mom, what the hell is this letter? No greeting. No pretense of courtesy. It's exactly what it says, Emily. You're changing your will? Because of one misunderstanding? It's not one misunderstanding. It's years of being treated like an inconvenience. Years of being good enough to ask for money but not good enough to introduce to your friends. That's not fair, isn't it? When's the last time you visited me, Emily? When's the last time you called just to talk? Not because you needed something. Silence. Long enough that I thought the line had dropped. I've been busy, she finally said. We're all busy. Your father was working 2 jobs when you were born, and he still made it to every softball game. Busy is a choice about what matters. So this is punishment? You're cutting me out? I'm not cutting you out. I'm giving you a choice. If I matter to you, prove it. Visit me. Not once a year at Christmas when you're obligated. Regularly, like someone who actually cares. This is manipulative. No, Emily. Manipulative is only calling your mother when you need something. This is called setting boundaries. I believe you're familiar with the concept. I could hear her breathing on the other end, sharp and angry. Part of me wanted to take it back, to smooth it over, to be the accommodating mother I'd always been. But that mother had gotten me here alone at 67, crying in my kitchen over a daughter who saw me as a burden. Fine, she said finally. I guess you've made your choice. So have you, sweetie. So have you. She hung up. I waited for her to call back, to apologize, to say she'd visit. My phone stayed silent for 2 weeks. Then, on a Saturday morning, my doorbell rang. Emily stood on my porch. No, Brandon, dressed in jeans and a sweater I remembered from college. She looked tired, younger than she had at the party, somehow. More like the girl who used to sit at my kitchen table doing homework while I made dinner. Can I come in? I stepped aside. We sat in the living room, the room I'd kept exactly as it was when she'd left for Columbia. Her high school photos still on the mantel, the throw pillows she'd picked out at HomeGoods still on the couch. I'm not here because of the will, she said. Okay. I'm here because Monica told me what you did. She told me you took out a loan. She said you looked so excited when you were setting up, like it was your own party. I didn't say anything. And I've been thinking about what you said. About Dad going to softball games. I don't remember him there, you know. But that's because he died before I started. You were the one who drove me to every practice. You were the one who bought the cleats and the glove and sat in the bleachers even when it rained. You don't need to do this, Emily. Yes, I do. She looked at me, really looked at me. For the first time in years, I became someone I'm not proud of, someone who values the wrong things. And I treated you like you weren't good enough because you reminded me of where I came from. But where I came from is someone who loved me enough to work herself to exhaustion, someone who gave up everything so I could have something. Tears were running down her face now, and I felt my own eyes burning. I don't know if I can fix this, she continued. I don't know if you can forgive me, but I'd like to try. Not because of the will. I don't care about the money, Mom. I care about you. I should have always cared more about you. I pulled her into my arms then, the way I used to when she was small and had scraped her knee or lost a friend. She felt bigger now, but somehow still like my little girl. You can fix it, I whispered, but not today. This is going to take time. I have time. I want to have time. She visited the next weekend, and the weekend after that. Slowly, carefully, we started rebuilding what we'd lost. She told me about work stress, about how Brandon's parents expected things she wasn't sure she could give. I told her about the library, about Mrs. Patterson's cats, about the finches in my yard. Small things, real things. She couldn't undo the hurt. The embarrassment at that party would always sting, but she could make different choices going forward. And I could make different choices too. I could stop enabling, stop shrinking, stop accepting crumbs from someone I'd given everything to. The scholarship fund would still get half of everything. That decision stood. But Emily would get the other half, not because she deserved it unconditionally, but because love isn't about keeping score. It's about teaching people how to treat you and then giving them the chance to do better. 6 months after that conversation, we met for lunch at a small cafe near my house. Not the Venetian Room, somewhere modest, somewhere I belonged. She introduced me to a colleague who happened to be there, a woman named Patricia. Patricia, this is my mom, Margaret. She's the reason I am where I am today. Patricia smiled warmly. Emily talks about you all the time. She says you're her hero. I looked at my daughter, surprised. She squeezed my hand under the table. She is, Emily said. I just forgot for a while. I'm 68 now. Emily visits twice a month, sometimes more. We're not fixed. There are still moments where old patterns emerge, where she gets busy and I feel forgotten. But we're better. She's better. And I'm better too. I learned something important through all of this. You can love someone with everything you have and still lose yourself in the giving. And sometimes, the most loving thing you can do is require them to love you back. Not with money or grand gestures, but with presence, with respect, with the acknowledgement that you matter. My house won't go entirely to Emily when I'm gone, and I'm at peace with that. Some of my legacy will go to other women like me, women who sacrifice and struggle, and somehow manage to raise children who reach for stars. They'll get scholarship money with my name on it, and maybe they'll feel a little less alone in their exhaustion. As for Emily, she'll get enough. Enough to know I loved her until my last breath. And enough to remember that love should never require someone to disappear. That's the lesson I wish I'd learned sooner. That's the lesson I hope she never forgets.